Tonight, the program everybody's talking about, the TV show Adolescence. Is it brilliant TV or purely woke propaganda? I'm going to try and persuade you that it's definitely brilliant TV. It's the best thing that's been on telly since things like Boys from the Black stuff, GBH, stuff like that. It is just outstanding. Brilliant performances, especially from the little boy, but also Stephen Graham and the woman out of £10 Poms. I don't know what her name is. And the woman who plays the psychiatrist. For me, it had a real relevance. If you've seen it, you know, in episode 3, when the little boy is being questioned, the 13-year-old guy accused of murder, that was me. I've been in one of those or several of those assessments when my dad dumped me in a children's home at the age of 13 as well. I thought the lad portrayed it brilliantly, the way he was completely lost. He kind of knew what she was getting at, but he wasn't sure. I'll talk more about that in a moment because I want to talk about, I know it wasn't about kids in care, but it just brought home to me more and more the fact there's 60 or 70,000 children in residential care at the moment. No one special to wrap them up at night when they're going to bed. No one to say, how did you get on today? And that's just in England and Wales. Just think of that. 60, 70,000 kids. I got the sack for talking about this before on Talk Sport. They wanted me to be controversial. I was just being me, saying I thought it was wrong because some bloke wanted to stop parents smoking, foster parents or adoptive parents. And I said, well, kids would be left in care. And what would happen is they'd be abused. I was right. I was proved conclusively right a couple of years later when the residential care scandal hit. But last night, that's what it reminded me of. That was a little boy lost. Don't get me wrong. He was as guilty as hell. But it was brilliantly acted. And I felt very much for Stephen Graham and his wife in real life, who plays his wife in the drama. I thought the pair of them together were tremendous. I thought the writing was really strong. And I thought it was fantastic. Now, I binge watch it because, as you know, I'm on my own at the moment down here looking after my daughter's dog. He might come in a minute and make an appearance. But I binge watch it. And isn't that the best thing about the streamers? You can watch it all in one go if you want. And it didn't drag. I watched all 4 episodes. As I say, episode 3 really hit home. Episode 4, when he put the teddy back in the bed and cuddled the bed, that really hit home. That hit home as a dad, how you feel when your kids move on. Not because they've gone to prison, but because they've got on with their lives. Yeah? So it resonated with me a lot. But was it woke propaganda? Now, I nearly didn't watch it because a lot of my friends and a lot of my contacts and a lot of people who I traditionally work with in broadcasting had said it's woke propaganda. They told me that it was based on a black kid who stabbed a girl and then got put down for it. And that they changed it to a white kid and it was all political correctness. It was all going to be about misogyny. It was going to be demonizing men or boys and, you know, especially white boys, and saying that white boys can never achieve anything. And I took a lot of this. I listened to Martin Daubney. He's a very good friend of mine and a very nice bloke. And he's done loads of work for boys to get recognition because white boys, as you probably know, in schools are the lowest achievers. So I take a lot of what he says very seriously. But he slagged this off straight away and he hadn't seen it because he said it was woke. And it's not just him. Lots of other people have said the same. And I thought, well, I won't bother watching it because it's going to be kind of, I thought it was on the BBC. I thought it was just going to be BBC crap. It's actually on Netflix. I really like Stephen Graham. I think he's a brilliant actor. But yesterday, I watched all of it. And I personally think it's some of the best TV writing, directing, and acting I've seen in years. It's all done on a single shot, a bit like NYPD. I don't know if you remember that detective thing 20, 30 years ago. David Caruso, was that his name? He was in it. It's done in that style, and that just added something to the whole thing. Long shots, lots of time to develop the story. It was just tremendous. So here's the question, and I want your views. Feel free. I've got it open tonight. I'm not expecting thousands of people, but if you want to say something about it, you feel free. Feel free, especially if you've seen it. You can either agree with me or disagree with me. So, Gaunty, that's me. Is it woke? Oh, by the way, welcome to the show. Is it woke propaganda? No, I don't think it is. I think quite the opposite. I think it's actually talking about the plight of white boys. Now, let's go back to this thing. Was it based on the story of a black kid killing a white girl? Well, according to Stephen Graham and to the main writer on it, it was based on a few stories like that. Some of them were black victims, some of them were white, and some of them were black aggressors or murderers or black murderers. That's what it was. But they say it wasn't based on any one story. And I believe Stephen Graham. So it was a fiction. It was a drama. It wasn't real life, although it was dealing with real life subjects. That's the best kind of drama, in my opinion. I know that idiot Starmer's jumped on the bandwagon and he's called it a drama documentary. It wasn't. Because a drama documentary, I know this because I did study theatre, a drama documentary is based on one story and is clearly about that particular person or that particular event. This wasn't. This was a drama. And he did obviously want to talk about these big subjects. And as a father, I actually had a breath of relief that my kids were now grown up. Because I remember being on the radio 20 odd years ago when the internet first started, and we talked about making sure that the computer, there used to be a fantastic guy, he died, called Ray Wire. He was an expert on paedophilia. And the threat then was that men were using the internet to chat up women, girls, and boys as well to abuse them. And he had this advice, which is make sure the computer is always in a room that you walk through, in the dining room or the back room, the kitchen, whatever. Don't allow them to have this in their bedroom. Now, this was when it was all on dial-up. So if you wanted to watch a bit of porn as a kid, you were a grandfather by the time you got to the bit where she's taking her top off. I'm joking, but you follow where I'm coming from. And that was his advice. And I remember saying to him on the radio, yeah, Ray, that's a bit like when we were kids in Bulwer Road in Radford, when my mum was alive. That was when I was about 11. The phone was in the hallway next to the front door, next to the porch. Not a Porsche, a porch. Yeah, on a little brass sort of table with a glass top, very tasteful. And we had a party line with the Morgans up the street, so you could only use it when they weren't on it. You had to pick it up first and see if they were on it, and then if they weren't, you pressed the button and you could use it. So subsequently, if you got a phone call as a kid, your mum and dad could hear everything. And then your dad or your mum would shout, that's enough, get off that bloody phone. You've only just left them at school. So there was a kind of regulatory aspect to it. So I said this to Ray, and he said, yeah, John, that's exactly what it's like. As a parent, you need to know what your kids are looking at. He said, kids love secrets. That's why they get enticed into this murky world, whether it's not what's happening now with this incel movement and these idiots like Andrew Tate, or, he didn't know about this. He's been long dead. But, he was saying that's how they get into it. And I said, you're right. Because with pornography, right, I had so many dirty mags under my bed. My bed was about 6 foot off the floor. I almost had vertigo. Every 13-year-old, every 14-year-old was looking at porn, and they're still looking at it. Don't kid yourself. My child doesn't do it. They do. But this pales into insignificance when you see adolescence, and why it's so important as a grandparent or as a parent for you to watch it, not to come to a value judgment. I've had so many people today saying it's crap, it's cobblers, and even worse than that. And you say to me, why is that then? Oh, because Starmer likes it. He's using it as propaganda. It's propaganda from the government. How can it be propaganda from the government? It's made by a firm based, I think, in Sheffield, commissioned by Netflix, which last time I looked is based in America. It is not a government film. And also some of the things it says in there about the state of our education system, no government would be backing it. It's a savage indictment of our education system. I'll tell you what else it is. It's a savage indictment of many, many successive governments who have withdrawn money from schools. You know, when we talk about the selling off of the playing fields, no competitive sport, everyone's got to win a rosette, everyone's a winner. No, some people are bloody losers, and you got to learn that lesson at school, right? I was crap at cross country, good at rugby. I was clever, but I wasn't artistic. That's just the way it is. But do you remember all the extra-curricular activities we did? Whether it was playing rugby, cross country, football, gymnastics, going on trips to the theatre. All of that has more or less disappeared. Teachers won't do it because they say they're not getting paid enough and they don't get paid extra for doing it. And teaching now is so like being at the front, the battlefront. They're too knackered to do it. And, of course, the playing fields are being sold off, which is why we've got obesity. This is successive governments have done this, left and right. And then the youth service is always the first thing to be cut when there's council cuts in place. So, of course, idle hands make lots of work, if you know what I mean, without me being too crude. So it used to be porn, and that's bad enough with the sort of pornography you can now get on established sites. But people tell me if you go to the dark web, kids are looking at necrophilia. They're looking at all kinds of things that you and I would throw up at. But it's there. And don't make out that your kid won't have had a sniff of this, because that was the brilliance of the program last night that I watched. This was an ordinary upper working class, middle class family. He was a self-employed businessman. He was a plumber. I don't know what the wife did. I don't know whether she worked in a school. They had an older daughter, and they had the lad, Jason, is it? He was 13, right? 13 years of old. They didn't know that he was up to this. They didn't know also he was getting influenced by some people with pretty warped minds. There were bits in it that was a revelation to me. I knew quite a bit about the memes. I knew what an incel was, involuntary celibate. I didn't know the 80-20 thing, to be honest, that 80% of women, according to these morons, only fancy 20% of the boys. And that the whole idea is you can blame women and girls for all your inadequacies. That's what it basically does. And that's why Andrew Tate is such a malign influence. I think I interviewed him years ago because he's from Luton. He's from Marsh Farm. He's a moron, right? He's a moron. And it'd be interesting to see, can't say too much, what happens with these accusations of rape against him. But he's definitely got into our youth. And this family didn't know that when he ran upstairs, when he came in from school, that's what he was going to look at and talk about and be involved in. Now, I've never really believed there's a direct link between video, what you watch, and about people becoming monsters. I don't really believe that, because if that was the case, we'd all be dressed like Jane Austen or Hugh Grant, wouldn't we, in Emma and that other idiot. But we're not. You know, they said this about George Orwell's, was it George Orwell? No, Clockwork Orange, the brilliant book by Anthony Burgess. When it was made into a film, they reckoned that a lot of people, because the skinheads started wearing the gear, the bowler hats, and they reckoned that was the film that had turned them out. No, they must have already had a propensity to violence. I don't buy into it. But this thing is different, because this is active. It's not like you sit, watch a film, a porno or whatever, and masturbate. Sorry, but let's be frank, that's what we're talking about. And then the film ends, or you end, and you move on to something else. No, this is people talking to our kids, influencing our kids, making our kids think weird things. Like the guy who killed the mum and two daughters, right? That scumbag with a crossbow. Just before he'd done it, he'd been watching Andrew Tate videos. Now, I'm not saying Andrew Tate is therefore responsible, but I'm saying that you need to know, especially if your child's 13. So it was a complete shock to them when their door, and the way the series starts is the door gets kicked in by the police, armed police. and they arrest the lad. He's 13. He pees his pants. It's a brilliant, brilliant scene, very slowly drawn out. But you remember that he's only 13 because he messes himself. But they treat him like a suspect, a murder suspect. And then he goes down to the police station. And because it's all shot with one camera, one shot, it's just really realistic. And his dad says, "Did you do it?" And he says, "No." And his dad believes him like a dad would. And of course, it's going to build and build and build until he realizes he is guilty. By the way, I know some comments are coming in now. I will come to you, so keep them coming. I just want to explain what I felt about it. And I just thought they set that up fantastic. So it is. I don't think it is woke propaganda. The scenes in the school was like hell on earth. Just like hell on earth. So it immediately got me thinking about all the things we've talked about recently. Do you have to ban mobile phones? Well, of course you do. There's no need for a smartphone in school. No need whatsoever. Oh, what if he gets a detention or he's late home and he misses the bus? Tough shit. What did we used to do? We either rang up from a phone box or we waited till we got home, knowing when our dads came in, we were going to get 7 barrels of you-know-what kicked out of us. It also got me thinking about teachers. There was hardly any male teachers in it. Hardly any male teachers. And that is the same in every school, especially in junior and infant schools. Men are not going into teaching. Now we need to address that and ask why. Because kids need both influences, a male and a female. And forget all this nonsense about there should be no difference. Of course there's a difference. That's another reason why our society is in this mess. Society, a man's not allowed to be a man, right? So when Martin Daubney went on about this, that this is terribly woke, and he hadn't seen it, obviously, it was actually defending what he believes, which is we've got to listen to boys and young men, and we've got to help them find an identity. And one of the ways of doing that is having more men in the classroom. And another way is having competitive sport back in schools. Ken Cook, who I talked to you about the other day, the RPE teacher, Gaunty, he used to go when I had a bit of mud on pumps, then you have to take one off and they'd give you 2 on the arse, right? But it taught you to respect yourself. RESPECT, as Aretha would say. And by respecting yourself, you then made sure you had the right kit every time, right? And the other thing he always used to say, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So he believed in team building. He was ex-army. A lot of teachers in those days and policemen were ex-military, weren't they? And they had a discipline about themselves. Now, I know some went too far, and I'm not necessarily saying, I used to say bring back the cane, but I'm not sure we need that now. But what we do need is real men. Men who are men. Men who like doing manly things, like playing rugby or football or going to the game on a Saturday and singing your heart out and shouting some abuse, not racism, abuse at the players. That's part of the collective experience. And I would also suggest that because factories closed down, I mean, in Coventry, the Standard Triumph, 25,000 people lost their job in one day. I worked there one summer pushing cars off the track. I've talked to you about it before. But what factories gave you was a community. And what it had was older men and younger men. So if a younger guy said something wrong, the older guy would give him a clip round the ear. I remember John Coles. Remember him, the Irish politics presenter on the BBC? He did the trip to Wigan Pier and he met a load of old steel workers somewhere, Corby or somewhere. And that's basically what they were saying. There was a moderating influence. They didn't put it in that way. But now kids are just always with their own age group. And as we've got more diverse, which of course we haven't, but we've had more people in from other countries, they have tended to stick together. And then the white kids, what you'd call the indigenous English or British, keep together. And what we have then is separation. And then what we have is the potential for conflict. It's all pretty straightforward stuff. We need more male teachers. We need the school playing fields back. We need extracurricular activities. It needs to be funded. We need youth clubs. So Keir Starmer, instead of showing every kid this film and saying, come in and watch a film, which will be the equivalent of watching Playbox, was it called, on the telly. We used to have a big telly. It was on wheels, and then they'd open the doors of it, and we'd watch something on telly. I tell you the film they made us watch. It was The Amiga Man. Not Warren Beatty, can't remember. Big famous actor in it. It was the day after a nuclear holocaust. I don't know why they were showing us it, but anyway, it was not a bad film. The Amiga Man. Have you seen it? Anyway, if you know what it is, give me a shout on that if you can. So what I think is, with this film, this series, was a savage indictment on the kind of society we live in. The kind of society where we've got more means of communication than ever before. We've got computers more powerful, much more powerful than got Apollo to the moon, but we communicate less. They all do this, don't they? They communicate less. We don't actually commune. Likewise, pubs have closed. You can't afford to go to a pub. I used to go to the pub every night after work when I first left university. Every night. Only for a couple of hours, a couple of pints, maybe 3 pints. But it was a way of letting off steam. It was a way of discussing things. Who was it who said recently? I think it was Nick Hogan, the man who tried to save the pubs from the smoking ban. He said pubs are like the modern church or parliaments. There are mini parliaments where we discuss what we think. No wonder Keir wants them closed down. No wonder he's doing his damnedest to close them down, because that's where dissent starts. So it's an indictment of our society. And I'll tell you the final thing is, it's an indictment of modern parenthood. Now, I was lucky when we were bringing up the kids. I had a great job. I've always earned quite a lot of money. When I got on the radio, I mean, and writing for The Sun. So Lisa didn't have to go to work. She made the decision to stay at home and be there with the kids. Not many people can do that, I understand, with mortgages and the rest of it. But it's not just mortgages, is it? It's avarice. And I know this because I had 2-3 cars at one point. I wanted 2 or 3 holidays a year. I lost sight of what's most important, which is listening and looking and discussing big subjects. We never had food on our laps. We do now as we got older, which is ridiculous. But we believed in the family table, even if it was just the kitchen table. All of this is gone. Don't look at me like this as if I'm being a Puritan or I'm making it up. This is the truth. You're at fault, you and me, because we haven't put the input in. What did the Jesuits say? Well, got to be careful using the Jesuits as an example, but give me a child at 7 and I'll give you the man back at 17 or something. It's true. And the way you do that is taking an interest and making them do some things they don't like doing, like playing sport. The idea that kids can just duck out of it, which is what they do now, it's ludicrous. So it's our fault, as well as all the rest of it. And all of this was spinning in my head last night. All of it, right? And I was feeling guilty, although I think I was a pretty good dad. I'll tell you about how I got put in a children's home in a minute and about how that affected me, because I think you'll be interested, because it has got parallels with what we saw. But let's take some of your comments. Mark Porter, I watched the first 2 episodes and had to turn it off after that. Why? Oh, watching the bad behaviour from the pupils at the high school became nauseating. There was too much of it. The school looked out of control. It was. And some of the overacting was annoying. Overacting? Stephen Graham and the young lad did well, but the second episode made me switch off. Just my humble opinion, John, says Mark Porter. Mark, on Facebook, you're entitled to your opinion, but I'm entitled to say this to you. Switch it back on. Watch episode 3. Watch it. Honestly, mate. Honestly. Trust me. It's the best bit of drama, and I've seen loads of drama, theatre and whatever. Just the best. It's just the little boy and effectively the social worker. She's having to do an assessment on it. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Evening, John. I watched it as a mini-series. It was okay, says Delboy, YouTube. Starmer wants to show it in schools. Why not show the series Three Girls in schools? The problem in Britain is not 13-year-old white boys, says Delboy. Delboy, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. And that brings me to this whole racism thing. This story that's been spread, that they changed it from black lads, not Asian lads, black lads, because they thought there'd be an outcry. Do you know what? I don't believe they did. But do you know what else? Here's the bit that's going to wind you up. I wouldn't have blamed them if they did. Because, Delboy, if that was a program full of black characters, and I've looked this up today, proportionally, the amount of black stabbers, the people who stab and use knives, black kids are and Asian kids, it must be said, but it's mostly black, are massively overrepresented. Now, that's different to saying, because when I first wrote the blurb for this day, I put black lads do most of the stabbing and are mostly the victims, which is true. But the word mostly is wrong. Proportionally, it's much higher, but it's not the majority. Do you understand what I'm saying? What the difference is when it comes to statistics? I'm not denying that there's a problem within the black community. Christ, I worked on BBC London and spoke to the black mothers in Brixton about dealing and the rest of it, right? I was at the forefront of that Brian Paddock experiment when he decriminalised cannabis and Brixton became like a hellhole. So I understand this. I listen to those mums, single mums, talking of which, we'll go on to fathers in a moment. But it isn't just black kids. And if it was, Delboy, and I want you to be honest now, if they were all black characters, it was a black family, you wouldn't have watched it. I don't think most people would. I don't think I would. I'd have thought that's nothing to do with me. Yeah, I know that. And I'd have made some derogatory comment, probably. Because it was an ordinary family and because they weren't living in a shithole, they were living in a kind of Barratt home, yeah? Or Wimpy or, I can't remember the one. Who did I live in? Anyway, you know what I mean? A nice estate, yeah? It hits home more. And I thought that was brilliant. So I wouldn't have minded if they'd done that. Because it's affecting all kids. And if you think, if you watched it, Delbo, all of it, you know that it wasn't really about the stabbing. That's just the headline. That's what drove the plot at the beginning. That film is not about a boy stabbing a girl. That's not what it's about. If you think that, you've missed the point. It's about this malign influence where kids now, because of the smartphone, have got access to things that you and I would probably throw up at if we looked at it. And most parents, like the parent in the show last night, the copper, the detective, who, by the way, was brilliant. He happened to be black. If he was amazed at all this thing about the emojis and what it stood for, he didn't know. And I'd hazard a guess most of my listeners today or viewers today wouldn't know. And we wouldn't have known if it was black drama because it wouldn't have registered. It also probably wouldn't have been on Netflix and had the same exposure. I'm just telling you the truth about how telly works, right? So it's an irrelevance. People can say, and you talk about Three Girls. Well, Three Girls was on the BBC in prime time, and I agree with you. That should be shown in schools. I'll tell you the other one that should be shown in schools is the parody of the suicide bombers. What was it called? Three Lions. That's brilliant at pricking the pomposity of your playground terrorists. That's an important film as well. But one doesn't detract from the other. And this whole black thing, I just wonder why, not Martin, but I just wonder why some people have really gone on that. That other woman, Bev Turner, I don't need to watch it to know what I think. Well, that is just pig ignorant. That's one step away from being Mary Whitehouse or burning books. That's why I watched it. I watched it because I wanted to be challenged, and I thought I'd come out the other side saying, brilliantly acted, all this, blah, blah, blah. But it's far-fetched because we all know knife crime's all about blacks. But it isn't. And I looked that up today. It isn't. It isn't. So, Del Boy, I'm not falling out with you. And come back to me, please, and tell me what you think about what I've said. I just think it has more power because they're a white, upper working class, lower middle class family. Steve, John, Andrew Tate is a vile, horrible, horrible person. He should be locked away with the key thrown away. I'd largely agree with you there. Nigel Gordon, trouble is parents go, my kids won't watch the dark web. Of course they will. Don't turn a blind eye and be naive. It's probably peer pressure at school as well. Of course. Of course. That's why they shouldn't have smartphones at school. Look to yourself. How quickly can you send on a joke or a meme or something that you think's funny or a mock video to your mate? Instantly. You don't think your kids are doing that? They know how to use a phone better than you and me. When I want something explained on the phone or the internet, who do I go to? I go to my daughters. I don't go to Lisa because she's as bad as me with it. We aren't part of that technology. We're not. You've got to ask your kids why they thought he was doing his homework. Why was he always going into his bedroom? Somebody should have asked him. Somebody should talk to him. And this is where the Martin Daubney argument falls down, because the program was saying white kids are being let down. We'll go on to the rest of it in a moment. Del Boys, come back to me. They are deflecting from the real issues of knife crime. No, they're not. It wasn't about knife crime. I've just explained that, Del Boy. Yes, a girl got tragically killed, but that was just the plot line that drove the narrative. He says they're hiding the real issues of knife crime and grooming gangs and two-tier policing and two-tier justice. We're all talking about adolescence. Can you not maintain the dialectic? Can you not talk about adolescence and also condemn the rape gangs? I can. And two-tier policing, I condemn that. And two-tier justice. Of course I do. It's wrong that that woman's still in prison for a few hurty words, although she had been a racist in the past. I mean, that's got to be taken into consideration. But don't just believe right-wing commentators. You wouldn't believe that of left-wing, and you wouldn't believe it of Keir Starmer. So why do you believe it of some jumped-up, stupid little Geordie like Darren Grimes? He's another one. Oh, yeah, I don't need to watch it. You can't condemn something if you haven't watched it or read it or listened to it. You can't do that. Three Lions was superb, says Ronnie Hurst on Facebook. You're right. The storyline was probably true to life. I think so. It's funny and it was good and it packed a real punch. Del Boy's back. You're out of order, John, to say I wouldn't watch it if it was about black gangs. Watch Menace to Society. I have more than once. Hang on a minute. I didn't say you on your own. I said I wouldn't. I was making a cultural observation that black programs mainly get watched by black people. It's wrong, and I was condemning myself. Del Boy, if you're going to make stupid arguments and not engage in an intellectual level, go and listen to Mike Graham. He'll rattle your perch, but you won't achieve anything. You won't make change, and that's what I'm trying to say about adolescence. That's what was refreshing about it, in my opinion. Now, if you're listening, watching, live or not, and you disagree, please get in touch. Write a comment, feel free. Go on Twitter, tell everyone that I'm an idiot, whatever you want to do. But don't misrepresent me. I thought it was a brilliant piece of drama, and I'm saying it was indicting me and you as parents and as our society. No one's listening to the kids. Gaunty, watch the blood pressure. Well, that's not the kind of radio TV I want to create. The kind of radio and TV I want to create is honest. Not sat down with producers before, oh, say this to Gaunty, then we'll get this guest, and then we'll do that, right? And it matters to me because I was that little boy. When my mum died, my dad tried to keep us together. He was a hard drinking CID man. I've written about this in my book. You can check it there. But my dad was useless. The only thing he could cook was egg custard. And as the Bible says, is it man cannot live on egg custards alone. Also, he just wasn't a generous, caring man. He just wasn't. Never was with my mum, and he wasn't with, as it turns out, in later life, as a grandfather to my children, he was very good. But he wasn't in the 1970s. He was like Gene Hunt in Life on Mars on steroids. So eventually we got put with friends and relatives. I got pushed from relative to relative in Hull. Then I came back. My dad met me. He didn't say a single word to me. And he took me in his car and we went up this, well, I'm shortening the story a bit, but we went up this gravel drive, which is why to this day, I can't bear the sound of tires on a gravel drive. It drives me crazy. Anyway, he put me in a home, a children's home. I'm in the room and I'm talking to Wooly. He was the boss of the home. And he said, oh, Miss Steed will be here in a minute. She's your social worker. And I said, I ain't got a social worker. And I heard the door open and close, open again. And the woman walked in. When it opened the first time and closed, that was my dad going. He didn't even say goodbye. And then this woman was meant to be my social worker. And the first, I think, weekend or a whole week, it all gets messed up in your head. I didn't speak to anyone, not anyone, apart from another lad called Danny. And he said, how long are you here for? I said, well, it's an assessment, they tell me. I've got to spend some time for them to assess where it's best to send me. I can still remember what he said to me. He said, bollocks. He said, they said that to me and Tony, my brother, and we've been here years. Oh, somebody will adopt me. Somebody will foster me. No, they weren't. They just want little brown kids or white kids or babies. They don't want fat, ugly plebs. He didn't say pleb. He probably said the C word, like you and me. That's what he said. That said, I had some great weeks in that children's home. I was saved in the end by my Auntie Rosemary. But they did that psychological thing. I don't know if you saw episode 3. I was here and I was blubbing like a baby last night. It really affected me. Because I know what it feels like. I hadn't murdered anyone, but I know what it feels like to be totally out of control. And when he says to her, what are you writing down? Show me what you're writing. And she said, I can't. And the worst thing was her last line, her payoff line, when she'd got him to basically admit he did it, because she was there to tell the judge, character what he's like. She said, right, I'm going now. It's cold. And he said, what do you mean you're going? Oh, I'll tell you, before that, he'd thrown a load of furniture around, a chair around in the room. I did exactly the same. I wrecked the head of the home's office. I picked up a chair, tried to smack it over his head. I've pushed all the stuff off the desk. Uncontrollable rage. Uncontrollable rage. A lot of which now, at 64, I'm still carrying. I try to get rid of it. You see it come out sometimes on programs like this. I hope you realize I'm being absolutely bloody honest here, right? So uncontrollable rage. And then at the end of the interview, she says, right, I'm going now. And he says, well, don't you like me? And she wouldn't answer. And I remember in the children's home, a very similar incident when I suddenly realized all of these social workers were only, I was in 13, or they were only doing it for the pay packet. That's not to say that some of them weren't genuinely concerned or care about you, but at the end, they had their own families to go back to. This is why I'm so adamant about large residential children's homes need closing, and kids need to be put, I don't know, in groups of 6 or 7 with a couple of social workers, or they'll be with until they're 16 or 18. That's the other thing. At 16, they kick you out and you've got jack all. And where do most kids in care end up if they've survived the care system? In prison. Why do you think a lot of them have turned out to be prostitutes? And when we talk about so don't give me lectures about the grooming gangs. I know about the grooming gangs, right? I had friends in care with me who were doing it, and the social workers were turning a blind eye to it then, 40 years ago. And it wasn't just Asian men doing it. It was top policemen, and that's what's been going on. That's why you're not getting a national bloody inquiry. That's why the Tories won't allow it now. Why the Tories want it and Labour won't. Tories didn't do it when they were in power. No government in power is going to give permission because it's going to destroy the government. When it comes out, the extent of paedophilia and child rape in this country, it will bring down the government. That's why they're not going to have a national inquiry. That's what it's about. Believe me, I know. I've been there. Anyway, I've gone off the subject a bit, but what I'm trying to say is that little boy then realised it game over. In the next episode, episode 4, he rings up and he says, I'm going to confess. I'm going to plead guilty. And I love that because then it was left with the mayhem of the mum and dad, and the dad going into the bedroom, finding the teddy from the boy. There were just so many beautiful moments in that. In terms of the wallpaper, it was child's wallpaper, and then the football poster, and then that's the thing, because they said to the lad, well, do you play football with your dad? Oh yeah, he came, but he was embarrassed because I made a mistake. That's one of the things with my dad. My dad was never proud of me. Never, ever proud of me. Never proud of me. Never said well done. The only thing he ever said was, you've put on weight. Oh, it's his only ever compliment. Maybe he was incapable. He lost his father at a very early age. So you don't know. You know, I've had a bit of therapy about this, believe it or not. So I do understand. So the little boy, and then the dad goes back and he ends up, loses it because somebody writes nonce on his van, and the rest of it goes into a hardware shop. Some idiot in there, a Martin Daubney wannabe, says something about conspiracies and incel and all the rest of it. He's just working in B&Q, this guy, right? And he loses it with him. And then the next door neighbours, being the nosy Parker, he loses it with her. And then he goes up to the bedroom. And in the bedroom, I say, brilliantly shot, brilliantly designed. And then there's a teddy in the bed. Obviously the teddy of the young lad, who obviously he had it since he was a kid, a baby or whatever. And he picks up the teddy and puts it in the sheets. And then he says, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, lad. Oh, man. Just brilliant. Just absolutely brilliant. And that's why this whole debate about black and knife crime and the rest of it is just a side issue. It's to deflect you from actually watching the show. This idiot Del boy, he doesn't give up. Del, how thick are you? You said it was all black characters and a black family. I wouldn't have watched it. You're out of order saying that. No, I'm not out of order, because I included myself in that. I said, that's the problem. But you can't see it. You can't see what I'm saying, which is fine. You revel in your own ignorance. Tony Hodgkinson says propaganda TV at its finest. My only question is, Tony, did you watch all 4 episodes? Because if you didn't, you're talking shit. But if you did, that's your opinion. And in a democracy, you're allowed that. John, I listen to many different things on here and the radio, but not in all. But in all my years of listening to you, you have opened my mind to many things, and your debates are one of a kind, which me and my partner also debate about afterwards. That's very kind. Del boy, he didn't say just you. John meant people in general. I stand by it, Del. You report me to the police. You call me a racist. You call me anti-white. You call me whatever you want, because I clearly said me and many other people wouldn't watch it, and that's a fact. It is just a fact. And actually it's a sad indictment of society. Anyway, getting back to my point, I want to finish in a minute. I just think it was brilliant telly. I don't think it was propaganda. If it was propaganda, it was saying we must listen to boys. We must remove people like Andrew Tate out of it. We must have more openness. What we could do as parents, if I still had children now, I would definitely not let them have a smartphone when they went to school. I would definitely not, I'd take it off them when they came in from school. If they want to be on the phone, they can do it in the front room in front of me. They're not looking at naked women. Get this into your head. They're looking and talking about much worse things than that. And that 13-year-old boy, he was a cipher. He could be anyone's kid, anyone's grandkid. He was a nice kid, apart from he had this secret. And I go back to Ray Wire. Google him if you want, W-Y-R-E. He was one of the leading he worked with all the pedophiles, all the guys, all the monsters, as we call them. He was the one who said, when you're a kid, you have secrets, John. And that stayed with me all my life. As I say, I watched that program last night thinking I'd be slagging it off today. I can't slag it off. I can't think one thing that was no good in it. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I think it's a debate we need to have, and we need to protect our children from themselves and from malign influences. People like Andrew Tate, not just him, there's loads of people like him who just fill their heads with rubbish, conspiracy theories and the rest of it. These kids are highly intelligent. They're just not being given the chance at school. They need men in there. They need people like Ken Cook who'll give them a slap or a metaphorical slap to keep them in line. Because young boys are full of energy, aren't they? They're full of aggression. And we shouldn't therefore emasculate them either and make them less manly. We want them to be. I don't know about you. I want women to be women and men to be men, but I want us to be equal but different. So we all have the same opportunities, but we recognize a woman's a woman and a man's a man. That's what I think. And that's where we've gone wrong as society. But we can't just blame it all on society or blame it all on governments of whatever colour. By that, I mean, the rosettes. You've got to say it's down to parenting. It's down to what you've put in. You only get out what you've put back in to a child. And a child needs to be listened to. And that was, to me, the prevailing kind of message of that program, Adolescence. And I thought it was just genius. John, I'm much like you, old school. I believe children should be out in the street playing football or cricket, not stuck in their bedrooms on devices. Exactly. I was lucky. I took my kids out to the old school woods, play football with them, always out and about. My kids didn't get time in their bedrooms to watch shit. Nigel, that's a good way of putting it. Dark Angel, you're late. She says, evening, John. Evening, Dark Angel. All right. I've said too much. I've gone on too long. I do apologise. I hope you weren't bored with what I told you about my time in my beginning of my time in care. But please remember there's 60 or 70,000 children in that position. And please remember, we need to do something about it. And we need to do something about our children. And that's what Stephen Graham was saying in that program, in my opinion. But don't. I've had quite a lot of people. I mean, I could have cancelled tonight. I thought I'd get a bit of a hammering because people have been convinced by the Bev Turners of this world and the Martin Dormers and that thick Geordie twat, Darren Grimes. Right? What does he know? He knows the sum total of nothing, right? They've even got rid of him off GB News. Why do people listen? Moonhawk, you're right. On YouTube, iPad is the new parent. Yeah. One of the things I've missed this last week or so, being here, I normally go to a cafe in Coventry. I won't say where, but I go every day. And I got a friend in there, Rosemary. Right? She's older than me, quite a bit older than me, I think. And we just got talking one day, and now we talk every day. And it's like a kind of, I don't know whether it's a mini therapy session. I don't know. And she's one of the only people I would allow to tell me off, right, along with Lisa. And I just have half an hour. And then I feel better. I feel set up for the day. And I hope that she feels the same. But it's a mixture of ages. And I've missed it this week. I've got 10 days while I've been down here. I haven't had that. Oh, Seaside Monk says Darren Grimes quit GB News. Yeah, that's right. And I'm Slimmer of the Year. But anyway, he's useless. I'm telling you, he's useless. He's a little inflammatory little idiot, right? And anybody who says, I don't need to see something to know I don't like it, that's like a kid saying, I don't like cauliflower. Have you ever tried it? No. Doesn't your mum and dad make you make it? No. Well, you're going to turn out to be in later life then. I know when I did Simplest Fat, when I was telling people, you must eat broccoli. It's such a brilliant vegetable. Eat it raw. Well, I don't like it. And what they meant was they didn't like it at school or they didn't like the way their mum cooked it. So I used to say, eat it raw. And some people tried and then they loved it. I don't know how you get to being middle-aged and not eat proper food. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent again. What I'm trying to say is don't get rid of your own guilt, your part in turning out child murderers and rapists by pretending it's all to do with society or whichever political party you don't like or whatever radio presenter you don't like. It isn't. You've got input. You've got to put work in. And we've got to start listening to boys. We all listen to girls, and there's lots of emphasis on that, which is a good thing. I'm not suggesting a return to the old days where girls don't have proper jobs and all the rest of it. I'm not talking about that. But I'm saying somewhere along the line, we've lost boys, we've lost masculinity, we've lost the idea of what a man is. And we've got to rediscover that as a society. Anyway, that's me finished. If you do like what I'd say and what I do, I've got to say a big thank you to those people who started paying super bonuses or whatever they're called on YouTube. Very kind of you. Thank you very much indeed. And to anyone who's been buying me a coffee, we've changed it now to buymeabeer.com, but it's actually still www.buymeacoffee.com/Jon Gaunt. But now it's expressed as beers. Right? I was fed up of coffee. Not that it makes that much of a difference. Thanks for watching tonight. Sorry it was short notice. I couldn't wait and do it tomorrow. I'll do something else tomorrow. Because it just affected me so much. It just affected me so much. And that's what brilliant TV, brilliant drama, brilliant sport does. It has that cathartic effect on you. It has an effect on you where you've got to get it out and talk about it. So thanks for indulging me. See you tomorrow at 7, back to normal time tomorrow. Until then, especially today, if you've got kids, give them a kiss, give them a hug. Hey, don't forget to tell them you love them. And I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.